Hello everybody and welcome to FightGrind Radio, brought to you by the Las Vegas Tribune, my most gracious hosts. And today, for the first 30 minutes or so, I'm going to be jib-jabbering to myself, looking at a wall and no one to bounce off of. For all one of you that has ever paid attention to the show, that happens every once in a while. I can't always get guests in because fighters are busy people. They have full lives plus the training. And a lot of them have families or significant others, so you can't always get them in here. But after about 30 minutes or so, pending a car exploding or someone closing down the street, we should have Matthew Horlick in here to talk about the most recent UFC event, which I'm sure he'll have many words on. I certainly have my opinion on what happened, but I'm going to save that for when he gets here. So the first thing I wanted to do was give a sincere thank you to all the people out in Las Vegas who have made FightGrind possible and who have allowed me access both into the gyms and with them personally to get interviews and to be able to just get to know the fighters so that I have content to talk about both on the website and on this radio show. They didn't have to do that, and certainly when I first got here, they didn't have to trust that I was someone who would have their best interest in mind. But most of them did, and most of them were really gracious immediately, which was a big deal to me because you tend to get a lot of people who are cautious about, what you're trying to do and whether or not you're on the up and up. And one thing I've always loved about the fight communities is that people are there's an undercurrent of honesty there. That just kind of props up everything else. Of course, you're always going to have your charlatans and your people that just kind of step out of the lines of proper social etiquette, I guess you could say. You always have those people that glad hand and are more just giving lip service. There's always going to be those people, but the vast majority of those in the fight game, no matter what the sport and endeavor is, are usually people that need to be honest in order to survive. They're people that have to be honest with themselves. They're people that have to be honest with their coaches if they're fighters, or if they are the coaches, they need to be honest with their fighters about where the abilities are, where someone's abilities stand, whether or not someone can make it in the sport, whichever sport that may be. So it's one of the things I've really appreciated while being out here and trying to set up FightGrind.com and FightGrind Radio. Right now it's slow going. There's very few of you that, those of you that do listen, there's probably as many as could fit on my fingers and toes, at least most of the time. Every once in a while we seem to get a little extra push. But, that's going to happen when you're trying to start this stuff up. It can't just happen overnight. As much as I would love, I get a little manic at times with my projects, and I wish that I just could get 16,000 people per show to listen in. But that's just not the reality of how this works. Hopefully I'm starting to talk to sponsors and people that are interested in trying to help out the brand. The Tough Enough guys have been fantastic to me. And, of course, we've had the setback with losing Barry, which is so unfortunate. But overall, they've been really helpful in just trying to figure out how they can help me succeed in what I'm trying to do. So, like I said, I wanted this to just be an opening of a big thank you to all the camps and all the fighters out there who've been really supportive of what I'm trying to do, who have encouraged me to continue doing it. Because this FightGrind.com and FightGrind Radio are about giving the fighters some recognition and giving them a platform in order to start to build their name and get a little exposure into what it's like to have someone interview them, to sit down for these radio podcast pieces, and to just have someone who is already watching them almost like a scout, someone who's taking note of all the effort they're putting in and sees them on at least a weekly basis. It's really important to have, I think, in order to help these guys and girls get their first experience of that kind of focus and exposure. So both of these endeavors are ones that are specifically made to help you guys out here in Vegas. And, I've made it a point to try to make it specifically for Vegas. When people come in and they're fighting in Las Vegas, then I'm willing to do an interview about them or with them and bring them in and talk them up. But for the most part, this was made specifically for the fighters and the camps in this area. And I'm also going to try to do more to get in coaches when I can, and to get in owners of camps and companies when I can. Of course, that always becomes difficult because of the time that this goes live is 4 to 5 p.m., and that can be pretty difficult to get people who have, regular schedules and regular lives or are running a camp or a gym or a business. It's hard to schedule that time in, especially when your number of listeners can sometimes fit on the fingers and toes. But we're going to work on that. We're going to try to get them out there. And one of the most important things that I'm always emphasizing to people is I want to be able to help the fighters start to talk to sponsors. And that happens through giving them this platform, giving them something they can point to say, here's an interview I did, or here's a story about me. Of course, sponsors are often about the bottom line and how they can sell their product, but a lot of them can do that off of a good story and someone who they know is working hard and trying to accomplish things and is someone who's on the up and up, putting in the grind every day. So giving the fighters a platform in a way helps them directly get some help from the sponsors, or I guess I should say indirectly, and then trying to get the sponsors in here or on the website. Honestly, it's secondary to me how they help me out. I'm always going to find a way to do the projects I want to do. So being able to get a fighter, even if it's just protein powder from a company or maybe a certain type of sports drink or, whatever we can get them, as long as I can help them get something out of it, that's going to be the most important thing to me. And like I said, I'll find a way to do what I need to do to continue these endeavors. But these fighters, usually, they're living month to month. Sometimes they don't know where they're going to get their next paycheck from in order to be able to stay at these gyms, because they already are paying rent and utilities and their car breaks down and something goes wrong, or they just have debt that they've accrued living, a normal life. Nobody out here that I've met out of these fighters is living some sort of lavish lifestyle. And if they are, they're really good at keeping it a secret. Most everybody is grinding it out and trying to do their best to make it just to a point where they can start affording to train full-time and only work part-time because they already have some money saved up, or they're making a little money from sponsors. It's a harsh reality for fighters. So these endeavors are all about trying to help out those guys. And like I said, it's about all the sports. It's if I can help out a grappler, if I can help out a kickboxer, a boxer, even if I can help out a karate or taekwondo guy, if somebody wants to come in here who is more into the art form and the style, that's fine by me too, because that takes commitment, that takes endeavor, and you're still doing competitions. They're not the same type of competitions usually, but it's competitions nonetheless, and I think anyone out here who puts any time into a martial art, whether it's mixed or singular, can appreciate the other person's efforts, no matter what their endeavor is. So what you guys can do for me, I don't need money from fighters. I don't need fighters. If you guys can help me find a sponsor, that'd be great. If you guys know someone, but all I want from fighters is a little bit of their time, and then their blessing to take a picture and put their name on the website, or to come into the show. That's all I ask of them. The only other thing you can do is to click, like, share, read, listen, and talk about both FightGrind.com and FightGrind Radio. Click the like button on Facebook, share the links on Twitter if you're on that. Instagram, take a picture of me and then link it to something. I don't care. Although I am elusive. I almost made Jim Elmer would have liked it. I almost made a Pokemon reference, but I held off. That's his bag. I'm not going to jump on the Jim Elmer Pokemon bandwagon. That's his thing. I have my own dorky things. But I really want to emphasize, if you guys, I appreciate every time you guys click on a link or like the story, and especially sharing the story. That makes a big difference for me and for the company, FightGrind, and for this radio show especially. It's a huge deal. By clicking like and sharing and just taking a little bit of time to read a story or listen to these podcasts. I know I can be a little long-winded, guys, but just listening for a little bit, even if you got to skip through, I understand. Everybody's busy. But it helps tremendously, because every view, every like, every share adds up, and sponsors look at that kind of stuff. And by doing just that, you guys are helping me get sponsors talking. So when they start talking, I can start talking to them about how they can help you guys. It all just works in this, it's a web of contacts, essentially. And I'm trying to be the conduit between fighters, gyms, and sponsors, especially fighters and sponsors. Gyms usually are able to, those are business guys that are running those. They know how to do it. I honestly wish I could put up, banners and things that say FightGrind on it, but I don't have that kind of money right now. And again, if I can get some sponsors to help out here, I can start doing that. But for now, just take a couple moments, push the like button if you're on Facebook, share it either on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram. If you just happen to still be on MySpace, why not try that out? It couldn't hurt, right? Anywhere you can put it. You can throw it up on forum boards. I don't care if you are one of those people who likes to talk on the fight forums. Just put it in your signature or something. Put FightGrind.com. I'd really appreciate it. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's helped out, and everyone who will be helping in any way they can. And I can promise you I'm going to keep trying to help each and every one of you succeed to the best of my abilities. So anyway, now that I'm done with that, we can move on to what I did this weekend, which was attend the Grappler's Quest at the Sports Center in South Las Vegas. I don't know. Is that called South Las Vegas? I'm still new here. I've only been here since August. It's next to the airport. It's near the airport, and that seems pretty south. There's not too much after that. But whatever. It's in Vegas. It happened. There was lots of grappling. I was there for about 11 hours throughout the day, and that's how much I knew. I started to come to grips with how much of a nerd I am about fighting, or a dork I am, I guess, because I can sit there all day and watch it, and I enjoy it. I'm cheating a little because I love to talk to people that are also enjoying it, or the moms who are worried about their kids or their young adults who are involved in it, or the girlfriends that are annoyed that they have to be in another grappling tournament. Sometimes the boyfriends who are annoyed they have to be in another grappling tournament because for them it's not as fun. They don't nerd out as much. But I honestly, all day I can watch it. And one of my favorite things about being at grappling tournaments is the sort of mix of relaxed behavior and intense behavior that happens in grapplers. There's this heavy focus. They're always focusing in when they get to the arena or center that they're doing their competition at. But they're always at the same time sort of relaxed. They walk in, they don't look, they're not jumping around and going crazy, at least not most of them. They're not trying to hype themselves up and slapping themselves in the face like you see some MMA guys do, or boxers or kickboxers. Usually they're relaxed. They're hanging out. They got their casual clothes on. They got to change into their gis if they have them, or their fight gear if they have that, if it's a no-gi. And really, they just try to keep their focus in, it seems. And it's just, I don't know if I can fully explain it. I'm almost certain every grappler knows exactly what I'm talking about. There's a calm and an intensity at the same time, and they seem to be equal parts. And I love seeing that in people because it's this very intensive mental and spiritual focus. They can't do a lot for their bodies at that point. If they're feeling good, they're feeling good. If they're not feeling good, they just have to power through it and figure it out. But there's a mental game going on with themselves that they're playing, where they're trying to get themselves in the right mindset, not stress themselves out, but psych themselves up. And to me, it's just fascinating to watch. Maybe it's because I'm always so manic, and I always have to be doing something and getting something ready, and I always have to have a project going that I'm working on, just the entire time. Sometimes I can't put the phone down or stop searching things on the internet because I just have to always be doing something. So that concept of that linear, I've maybe myopic focus, I guess. It's just a linear focus. You're focusing in directly on, I'm about to compete, this is what I need to do. It's just, I guess, otherworldly to me, but I enjoy seeing it in other people. The other thing I love to watch while at the grappling tournaments is the progression of talent throughout the day, because, of course, you start with the kids and, like, little kids. And to me, I grew up with a lot of kids around. You know, I always saw lots of kids. I was used to being around lots of little kids because my family, extended family, lived near us. And I had cousins, and then as I got older, I had nieces and nephews that I'd see. So being around kids, they've never been annoying to me. They're not foreign to me. Like, for some people, they don't know what to do with kids. Kids are loud and irrational, and they scream, and they punch the air sometimes when they're mad, and they don't understand when you say you don't want to do something, and that drives some people crazy. Personally, I find it hilarious. Maybe it's because I had spent so much time doing logic and doing rational thought in school that now when I see irrational people, it's just funny to me. And kids do it in such a free way. They don't understand rationality yet, especially 4 through 6, which you see at the grappling tournaments. They're not being rational. They're just emotional all the time. It's pure emotion. They're super excited when they get there, or they're, timid and afraid. But it's one of the two, and it's, notched up to 10. And then when they win, they're super excited, or again, bashful and scared. When they lose, they're crying because they're 4 to 6. So that's fair. And I love watching just the adults try to console them, and the coaches trying to take care of the kids that lost, especially. There's always crying. But that's, like, honestly, it's half the fun of Grappler Quest, watching these kids when they're jumping around happy because they won, or just devastated that they lost. And, at 4 years old, what are you worried about? It's fine. You just should be having a good time. And we got Matt here. Let's see if Matt can turn on his thing. Yeah, push number 1, so the light should be off when you push it. And you should be good to go.
Well, it's great to be here.
How you doing? You got in a little earlier than I thought you'd be in.
Yeah,
I'm still talking about the Grappler Quest right now. You didn't go to the Grappler's Quest,
No,
I'm
I
guessing.
didn't. I didn't go, so please continue.
Yeah, I was just getting done with talking about the kids. I was talking about the progression, where you have the little tiny tykes who are just in there. Some of them have a little bit of skill, but it's very mechanical. They just go through the motions of what they've learned. Other kids freak out and just can't figure out what to do. And then as the day goes on, you get the older and older kids, the higher and higher ranks. So you watch this almost like the evolution of jiu-jitsu happening right in front of you, which is in a day. So if you're sitting there watching all day like I did, I spent about 11 hours there. It's a real fun, almost like project to watch, where it's all day. You got little kids who barely understand what the guard is. Some of them are good at wrestling, and that's about it. Then you get the teenagers who are starting to really understand how to use their strength and their flexibility and find out what their strengths and weaknesses are. And then as you get to the adults, and especially to the advanced adults, you start to see the game starts to slow down, and because everybody knows that everybody else is really good, and then there'll just be these calm moments and then an explosion.
Right.
And it's a frantic move. And if you don't know what's happening, it looks like they're just frantically rolling. But if you know what's going on, there's all these transitions and setting up moves. And like before, I actually started 2 minutes late because I got caught up looking at Jerry Shapiro throwing a flying triangle onto Cody Bollinger from the Tough Show. And it's just, when you get to that higher level, there's just some amazing stuff that happens there. And I saw the guys at Syndicate, the guys at Couture were there. And what I love seeing the guys who are willing to both coach and participate in those events. It's always good to see.
Yeah, I think that's great, and it's great to see where you go to the level where it's very competitive, but also at the younger ages where they just give them an appreciation for jiu-jitsu.
Right, and you know what? One of the things I love seeing is the coaches are so not worried about the outcomes with the kids. They love it if the kid wins. That's great, but especially anything below like 12, it's about them trying and them doing well. And the coaches are always high-fiving, and no matter how, the kid could go out there and lose in 10 seconds. And the coaches, it's okay. Don't worry about it. That's fine. Sometimes it happens. And I think it's also great for the kids that do stick around to see their coaches. A lot of times their coach isn't going to win the gold.
Right.
And it's good for the kid to see that the coach has an opportunity to say, look, we all lose sometimes. It happens.
Absolutely. And that's a credit to all the coaches where they're really developing the children, not just for jiu-jitsu, but for life in general.
Right. And I'll tell you, though, There's some parents out there.
The parents is a whole nother story.
Yeah. There's some parents out there that it was hard. I had to move a couple of times because I couldn't handle the parents. I don't mind the ones that are just hard, that kind of tough love,
Right.
especially when they get a little older, maybe preteen, where they're trying to push the kid a little bit. But I saw some parents. There was one lady her kid was stuck with the guy on top of him in mountain, and the other guy was just bigger than this kid,
Right.
and he couldn't get out of it. He didn't know how to get out, and she was sitting there going, "Oh, he's not even trying." And she was just getting mad at him, and I just couldn't. I'm so glad that I had parents who weren't like that, or if
Right.
they ever were, I never would have known it, because it was just so disheartening. His coaches are going to be like, "Hey, you did a good try, good
Right.
job," and give him high fives, and then he's going to go home, and his mom's going to just tear apart all that character building they were doing.
I think it's terrible. Some parents just like to live through their children, but more importantly, it can really affect them negatively outside the jiu-jitsu world.
And that's what I worry about. And not only just outside of it, but even as he gets older, if
Correct.
if
Can
he's
turn him off.
forced to stay with it, he's gonna not like it. He might become a bully in it, where he just wants to prove to everyone he's so much better because he has that insecurity now.
Right.
And I found that kid afterwards, and I said, "Hey, good job."
Good for you.
Well, honestly, I'm too much of a sap, and I feel immediately for these kids. I sympathize and empathize immediately. Because I always took losses devastatingly as a kid. I was really sensitive about losing in anything.
Right.
And this kid, honestly, he wasn't too broken up about it because his coaches were there and helping him out. So he was upset, and then he was like, okay, well, whatever. So I made sure I found him before his mom did and just said, hey, good job, and gave him a high five, and that was the end of that.
And you never know. That means a lot to the child as well. And,
It's either that or the creepiest thing that just some random guy named Bootsy comes up and high five and...
you have to learn how to win and you have to learn how to lose. I think it's part of it.
Right. And it's just too bad that some parents kind of steal that from the kids.
Absolutely.
I hope these kids are able to listen to the coaches more because the coaches are the ones that understand the sport.
Right.
But parent-child dynamic, it becomes tough.
And I think you see it in all athletics, and it's just
Certainly.
It's a shame.
It honestly is not. I don't want to make it sound like it's as bad as other sports in jiu-jitsu. There's a couple parents that are bad. I see it when I played baseball. It was like half of the parents, and I don't know why that was. Maybe it was just where I was or at the level I was playing at, because I was playing at a pretty high competitive level. But I mean, for the age group I was in, I wasn't like in AAA or anything. But there shouldn't be parents at those anyway.
Well, what's scary is when some of those parents are actually the coaches.
Yeah, we ran into that sometimes. It's stealing the opportunity for growth for the kids. I mean, you got to push them a little bit. I was talking to Justin.
There's a balance.
Yeah, I was talking to Justin Janes about it from Couture, and he was saying he wishes his parents were a little harder and pushed him a little harder sometimes. Although that guy's an amazing athlete. I don't know why he's worried.
Yeah, he's doing pretty well.
Yeah, but I talked about that too. That my parents were almost too supportive sometimes, just in the fact that honestly, I was so sensitive it probably would have ruined me if they were too much harder. But now that I look back, I would have been like, I wish they would have pushed a little harder. Should put a little onus on myself. Why was I doing it? But It's always easy to look back as a kid and be like, why didn't I focus more on that thing?
Well, I definitely think there comes a point where it should be very competitive.
Right.
And you should worry about winning and losing and always try your best. But at the younger ages, just build that self-esteem and make it fun.
Where do you think the general age is for that push? It's obviously there's going to be some more than others that you
some
push.
more than others. I would say, I mean, it depends. Early middle school, maybe teenage years. It really just depends on the coach and everything. I think that's when the good coaches really have your back, and they're going to put you in situations where you have an opportunity to succeed.
Right. That's why I'm glad that I work with the older adult, because I couldn't. If I kept seeing parents be like that woman was, I would quickly lose my job in whatever coaching position I had.
Right. Unfortunately, there are some bad apples, but there's a lot of great supportive parents, as you know.
That's true.
Just encourage your children to do well.
It just always puts that bad taste in your mouth. You can see 90 great parents or couples that are great with their kid, and you see that one, and it just makes your whole day, because you just feel for the kid.
Right.
And it's got to be rough, because they got to go home with those parents. I just hear them on the way out.
So you imagine if that's what's taking place in public, what's going on at home?
I don't even want to think. See, I'm going to start getting sad if we talk about that. I get too emotionally wrapped up in this. I can't even watch the guys at Tough Enough fight, so I have to hide.
The question is, if you're the coach, Bootsy, what do you do?
Yeah, honestly, if I'm the coach, I would do the same thing that I heard some other coaches were going to be doing today at their kids' classes, which was to sit the parents down and not pick anyone out, because these parents already have kind of a bully mentality.
Right.
So to pick them out then makes them just turn it on the kid. So I think the best thing you can do is sit all the parents down as a group and just talk about proper conduct and what will help these kids, and do it rationally. Just say, like, This is what we're trying to cultivate with these kids. We're trying to make them better, not only athletes, but people who want to succeed in an endeavor no matter how far they take it, and to always appreciate what they can do well and take positives away from what they don't do well.
That was very well said.
Well, my parents were both, they were into the counseling and positive, positive atmosphere.
Yeah, and the positive reinforcement's great. And as you said, it's not just an athletic thing. It can benefit the child in so many other ways.
Right, and that's honestly one of the reasons I can make such great statements like I just did, as you pointed out, was that my parents always, if I had a talent in something, or if they thought that I could improve in something, they always just encouraged it in a positive way.
Right.
And, applauded it when it was good, but didn't, sit there and laud over me like I was amazing every time I did something. And you see that sometimes with the parents, too, at these things, at grapplers. Honestly, you see it actually more with girlfriends and boyfriends, with the older people, where everything the person does is just fantastic. Right. But I guess that's because they have to deal with that person afterwards.
Once again, it's about that balance. You want the child to grow, so not everything's perfect, and constructive criticism in the right way, I think, is beneficial.
Right. And I got to say, next time that any of the grappling tournaments, especially Grappler's Quest, comes out, people need to go to those. It's so much fun to be there, because you can pick and choose when you want to show up. Once you get there, I think it was 12 to 20. I don't remember on the day of, if you got a ticket, what it was. But it's so much fun if you just sit down and talk to the people around you, all the different stories that you get, and then all day you're watching, good jiu-jitsu and good wrestling. Some guys come out there who are just wrestling background that just take over and are able to slap on some pretty awesome, almost like Eastern European wrestling submission holds, neck cranks and things. I don't know if they're allowed to crank, but it's interesting neck submissions that they'll pull off. But it's so much fun to watch. And especially, like I said, that progression throughout the day. You see something, you're like, oh, that was cool, that was interesting. And then when it gets to the higher level, you're like, what was that? Right. How did he pull that out? Where did that even come from? And I don't watch a lot of gi. I don't know if you ever watch gi rolling or any of that, but I don't know those strategies as much, so that fascinates me.
Right.
Because I don't understand the S-guard or any of that stuff, so I'm seeing them just grab pieces of clothing and torque people around. I'm like, why did he do that? And then all of a sudden he's on the guy's back, and I go, oh.
It worked pretty well.
Yeah, it made sense. But it's all, I honestly, people need to get out and check out these grappling things. It's not going to be like if you go to a bull riding thing where you see, intensive blasts of energy, but at times you do see some real amazing rolling.
Did you see some of the children where it's their first tournament and they won, just how they were feeling afterwards?
Yeah, when they're too little, I think they're like little machines. Like, they get out there, they do it, they go, did I do it? Yay? Or no? They just kind of leave. But especially around age, I'd say like 8 maybe, they start to recognize winning compared to losing.
Right.
And then 10 to 12 is where they start being competitive and trying to do new moves. Usually, once you get to the teen years is where you really see people appreciating what's happening. I think 10 to 12, you're seeing them just not want to lose. Right. They're so afraid of failing because for whatever reason, it's that age where everything's awkward and weird, and they're starting to be self-aware. Mm-hmm. So it's just a little scary for them to lose. So once they win, it's more just relief. And then when you get to the higher levels and to the teen years, you see people really taking in the experience, especially because so many people are at these Grapplers Quests. I can't give you a number, but the stands were pretty much full, and then there's just as many people around the mat as there are up in the stands.
So it shows you there's a tremendous interest in Southern Nevada.
Yeah, honestly, I was surprised how many showed up. I knew there would be more than what I see in California, because I was up in Northern California, so you don't see a lot of interest in it. It's more of a wrestling community, and even that doesn't get that much. So being down here and seeing all that, it was awesome to see. But I get the same thing when I go to the Tough Enough shows, where back where I'm from, you get like maybe 100 people to show up if you're the best show in town, and you do that maybe twice a year. So to be down here where you can put on shows every month and you get hundreds of people to show up every time is pretty amazing.
No, Las Vegas is a great community. I mean, it's the fight capital of the world for a reason.
Yeah, and I was actually going to mention running around all the camps lately has given me an appreciation for why it's called the fight capital of the world. Because it's great that so many people show up, but you could always chalk that up to there's just a lot of people that come here, and then some of them are on vacation. They just happen to see a show's in.
Right.
Why not go see that for $25, you know? But all the gyms that are here, there's Syndicate, there's Couture's, there's Vandalay's Fight Team, Fight Capital, Drysdale's, Rue, Cobra Kai, Excel Combat, Veritas is out there in Henderson. You got the North UFC gym that has a couple guys. One Kicks, who brings in some MMA guys. You have Torres, Cavalcante, Blacksmith started his own thing. That's 15 right there.
I mean, we take it for granted. There are people that can only dream about the gyms we have in Las Vegas.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time I talk to fighters who are from up where I'm from,
right.
In Northern California, if they're serious about fighting, they're asking me where to look for houses. Like, they're trying to find apartments immediately because now they know me out here, and I talk it up.
Right.
This is all I do is talk about fighting, and they start to see the gyms and they go, oh, I've got to do this. So it's always a good experience.
Well, it's one of those things. On any given day, you can be at these gyms, and there's a whole handful of UFC fighters.
Yeah, that's true.
And
it's amazing.
And you have the ability to get coached by these same coaches.
Right. Yeah, it's so I'm still not used to it, and I hope I never get used to it. That I can walk into a gym and Mike Pyle's there, and like where was I? I was well, we got to talk about the UFC thing in a second, but just we can kind of lead this into it. I was at a bar out here. It was Miller's Ale House. I'll just give them a shout out. Why not? It's a beautiful establishment, and they should certainly, just keep up the good work out there and their awesome service. But I was out there with a few fighters, and it's crazy to me that people don't know who they are. Because, it's not Anderson Silva walking in. You got, but although like Roxanne Modafferi's with me, everyone should know her at this point because she's on the Tough Show. And there are people that notice her. And I know there's some people who probably notice and just don't say anything because they're being polite, which is awesome. Everyone should try doing that sometime instead of going up and scaring people. But there's people like Mikel Parlo and Maurice out at Syndicate. I'm going to mess up his last. I always want to say Maurice Smith, but I think it's Maurice Campbell. Oh, I'm going to get crapped on if I got that wrong. But you got those guys out there. You got guys, I think Justin James was out there. I know Eric Nixick was out there, or Sinsick was out there. And nobody knows who they are, and I'm such a dork.
Not yet.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm such a dork. I'm like, why isn't everybody like mobbing this table with all these fighters on it?
Right.
It's crazy to me that people aren't noticing them.
Excuse me.
But it is what it is. Again, I'm just such a dork that I guess I take it for granted that like other people have lives. They don't have time to follow all these fighters. Heather Clark was with me too. Heather Clark's one of the baddest ladies on the planet at 125 to 115 in that realm. She's an awesome fighter, and it's shame on everyone for not knowing who she is.
Well, you're gonna see in some time they'll know who all those people are.
I hope so. I hope that all of these guys. I mean, Parlo's is in Bellator. Why people should know who he is.
Maurice is as well.
Maurice is also in there, and it's hard to miss Maurice. He is not a person where you would go, was that Maurice? No, yes. I mean, how tall? He's like 6'8" or something.
6'6", 6'8".
I
He walks
think
around close
6'6".
to 280.
Yeah, he's
290.
huge. I honestly, when we're in the bar, he was talking to me, and he's looking straight down, and I'm looking straight up, and he's talking to me, but he has to yell over the crowd. And so I always feel like a kid being yelled at by an adult for doing something wrong. And I'm always thinking that people seeing that of just this little white guy with a tiny beard looking straight up in the air at this giant fella who's just screaming down at me probably looks a little interesting.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
So the reason I was out there with all those fighters was for the UFC, to watch the UFC event. I know that you probably have something to say about the main event.
I'm not going to comment right now. We'll let you start.
Oh, you want me to go into it? Because I'll go into it. I can't tell you how disappointed I am. I feel like my dad, where I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed in what's going on with the sport. That someone, I know GSP put on a heck of a fight. Like, he put in everything he could. He worked real hard, and he got in some good shots. He had a good jab going, just like he said he would. He had some good body kicks and some good kicks to the legs. He had some real good ones. But they didn't affect Hendricks.
No.
They didn't affect him, and Hendricks put a beating on him. I mean, beat him. And it's crazy to me that after that fight, you could look at those two guys and say, I think George St. Pierre won that fight.
I'm the same way. I don't know how they came up with the scoring. I think the biggest problem is they adapted this scoring system from boxing,
Right.
the 10-point must system. I guess the first thing is it's a little easier to score boxing with knockdowns. Someone gets knocked down twice or going a 10-8 round.
Right.
Also, championships fights are 12 rounds opposed to a 5-round fight.
Right.
Then you bring that over to the MMA where you get a 10-9 round for someone. He barely wins that round. Then you dominate him the whole round, and it's still a 10-9 round.
Yeah.
To get that 10-8 round is really hard, but I don't know what fight they're seeing. There is no way in the world you could give St. Pierre 3 rounds. He's tough. He took some hard shots. He showed a lot of heart, but that doesn't give you the win.
Yeah, I agree. And even if you could somehow, like, this is what I said to people when they were all arguing about it, because everyone was arguing this weekend, was I suppose that you could make a analytical argument for him outpointing Hendricks out of maybe a mix of control and body shots and pot shots here and there. You can make a case for it. But that doesn't change the fact that the person who got the crap beat out of him was George St. Pierre. If you're looking at it as a fight,
right,
then George St. Pierre lost. If you saw that fight on the street, you wouldn't say George St. Pierre won that fight.
I agree, and you always hear all these people, you got to take it from the champion. But it's not like that. Each round is scored differently.
Right.
And based on the 10-point must system, they do take into account aggression, power, and all these elements into it.
And I want to fight anyone, physically or in a debate, even if I get my ass kicked. I want to fight them for saying you have to take it from, you have to beat the champ to be the champ. It's the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard for two reasons. Number one, the moment that you step into the cage, you forfeited your belt for the time of that fight. That's why Dana has the belt. You're now the number one contender. I wish they would just hang it above the cage. I know that people would find that too WWE, but just to give that idea of that this belt is on the line. Right. Nobody has it right now. And so the idea that the champion can just defend it but not try to win is insane to me for that reason.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've been reading up a lot of things, and they're talking about we're going to do this training, we're trying to do that.
Right.
The problem I see is someone might be very, very competent. They could have 10 hours of training a day. If they're dishonest and have no integrity, it doesn't matter. You got this C.J. Ross who did the, boxing with Bradley. There was no way in the world it can be that. And then she is rewarded with the Mayweather fight, who for some reason she gave him only 6 out of 12 rounds, which made it that majority decision over unanimous. There needs to be consequences. I would love to see a judge go to prison for 20 years to make a stance, because it's going to ruin UFC, ruin MMA, just like it did boxing.
Well, you know how I think you can fix it without trying to this doesn't fully fix the problem, but I would say this is the best chance you have of fixing a lot of the either incompetence or corruption. Because I don't know which one it is. I honestly can't tell if these people are just dumb or if they're corrupt.
And people make honest mistakes, and that's part of the game. That's part of athletics.
And in a 3-round fight, it's certainly easier to do. That you could just see one thing but the big changes I think have to happen. Number one, judges have to be looking at monitors. Screw this looking through the cage thing from one angle. We all see the fight. There's no blackouts during these events, and if there are, I'd then start looking into the cage. But look at a monitor where you get a perfect angle of everything. Why wouldn't you allow that for judges? It's their job to know what's happening in the fight. So give them that. Secondly, there has to be a post-fight press conference for the judges, and they have to explain what it is that they saw. If you do that, they don't have to be the most eloquent people in the world.
Right.
I don't need a dissertation, but just say, it was the takedowns that made the difference for me. Or it was the fact that he was always pressing forward that made the difference because I felt the striking and the grappling was about even. That's all I need to hear. I don't have to agree with you, but I have to know that you're accountable for your own judgment.
Absolutely.
And all they do on these cards is circle somebody. They don't have to explain
and
it.
There does have to be justification because, look, we've been at fights. We saw them. Depending on what angle you have, you could judge it a different way.
Sure.
Okay?
That's where the monitor comes in.
And then you see it on TV, and it's a little different. But sometimes, I don't care what angle you're looking at, there's no way one person can give a round, a 10-9, 10-8 round to one person, and another judge give it to the completely other person.
Right.
And that's happened in the past.
It's
there
happened
needs to
a few
be consequences.
times. Yeah.
The commissions have to have consequences for these fighters. Not for the fighters, for the judges, excuse me. There has to be consequences.
Yeah.
Difference between honest mistakes and just dishonest and no integrity.
Yeah, and that's the big thing I worry about because I go on forum boards because I like to see what the kind of the weather is like out there when things like this happen. And unfortunately, this whole event was just ruined by this decision. If it had gone to Hendricks, there'd be GSP fans that were upset and would make a case that he scored more. But overall, everyone would have just said, this was a great fight. GSP fought his heart out, but it didn't work this time for him.
Right.
That would have been it. Now we have this, what's wrong with GSP? What's this personal stuff? Why did the judges do it wrong? Is Dana going to try to get someone, is he going to actually try to get the governor to investigate stuff? There's all this extra crap now that if the judges just did their job, and again, do they read the rules? Like, I can't figure out if they're stupid or if someone's just being like, look, if you have a chance, make it go this way, and we'll give you X amount of dollars.
I think they're fully competent.
Well, that's
just my thoughts.
That's a nice reverse way of saying the other thing.
I think the judges are competent, and for whatever reasons, they make a choice not to make honest decisions.
Right. Well, that's when I read the forums and people are talking about the UFC is corrupt because they don't get that the UFC doesn't pick these people. And then, like, I honestly, if you hard pressed me and I had to go into court and sit down and people said, "What's your honest opinion on this?" I don't feel like it's the Nevada State Athletic Commission as a whole. I don't feel like it's them. I think it's really easy to get to a single person and to say, look, we've got X amount of dollars on the line. If there's an opportunity to make it go this way, we'll give you X percent.
And the sad thing about it is you'll never know about it either.
Right, yeah, and it's these are not people that would let that kind of thing be known, which is exactly why I say that the thing to do is give them the monitors and then make them rationalize it.
I think that's a good start. There needs to be something, but there is some great judges and referees out there. You might
for sure, and all of them are usually good, and then make a little mistake here and there, but it's not like
what you
saw.
Mistakes, and that's going to happen in any athletic competition.
And what's weird is that they seem to be on point the rest of the night, and that's what makes it really shady. Sometimes you get those cards where every time there's one judge, you're like, what is this guy looking at? So you know that that's just not good news for the whole card. But this one, they were on point the whole night and then made the most egregious error possible, if it was an error.
For the sake of the integrity of the sport, now, what if you bet on Hendricks? He was like plus, 360?
Yeah, I'm so glad that I don't bet money on these fights right now because that would have been...
And I think the focus,
that would have been bad.
As you said, Bootsy, now the focus is taken away from what a great fight to all this controversy afterwards.
Yeah, it was Hendricks was masterful. People are giving him crap for not going for the finish a couple times, but when you're in a 5-round fight, you gotta pace yourself.
He cracked him. St. Pierre showed a lot out. He hit him with that left hand a few times.
Yeah, well, you could see on his face, he hit him with something a few times.
I think he hit him with shots that would have put most people out.
I think so. And then he got guffed for saying that he was hitting him with 70%. People took that as he was only trying 70%. Well, because we heard it from John Jones where he said, I was only at 70%. Right. And so people were quick to judge Hendricks. What he was saying was he wasn't trying to throw 100% the whole time because he didn't want to gas because everyone was worried about him gassing.
Right.
And to be fair, he was close to gassing anyway. So he was smart for only going 70.
Yeah, it's in the biggest fight of his life. He had a great strategy. He came out with leg kicks. I would have never thought that.
Right. His body shots were magnificent. Rogan kind of dogged on him, but he had some beautiful body shots where he'd fake that uppercut, and GSP would put his hands up, and he'd go right to the liver. I kind of wish he did it a little more. Although GSP's done Kensho karate or whatever it's called for a long time, so I don't even know if he can feel body kicks. But he definitely took a wallop on there. But it drives me nuts. There was also the judges completely missed the trip takedown. Hendricks did the foot sweep, and they called it a trip. But if you watch it, I've seen it in wrestling, especially high school wrestling, where people get away with more simple tactics. When GSP was trying to circle to the outside of Hendricks' lead hand, he put his right hand behind his head, and then he stepped into the direction that GSP was circling out of, and GSP tripped over him. That's a sweep.
Right.
And they didn't call it. They decided that he didn't get a takedown. And that's when he had top position. He got top position again, and he cracked him a few times, and then he let him up because he didn't want to waste his energy, probably because he knew he probably didn't know if they were going to give him that takedown. It's another thing that drives me nuts about the judging is if they saw it on the monitor, they would have known it was a takedown.
Right, and I think you just can't leave it in the judges' scorecards. That's ultimately what it comes down to.
But that's the most that drives me nuts too. I know that we shouldn't leave it in the hands of the judges, but the point is that's like saying you shouldn't leave it up to the parents to make sure the kids grow up right.
Right.
It's their job. That's what they're supposed to do.
I agree, and I think when you try to knock them out or submit people, you take some very high risks where you can get caught as well.
Right.
And a lot of fighters run into that because they try to finish fights, and what happens? They wind up getting caught.
Right. And I was expecting Hendricks to get caught around the third round on because he kept, when GSP would throw that right straight, he would lean his head back, which was okay. He was trying to move with it, but he would look away.
Right.
And that's where you can throw that right kick to the dome, and the guy will see it coming, but he won't be able to react in time because he's already turning away. So I was surprised that I don't know if GSP's left or right-footed, or if if his strong kick is his opposite kick. So I'm not sure if that's why he didn't do it, but I kept waiting for him to crack Hendricks in the face, and it just never happened.
Yeah, you're right. It never happened. What do you feel was a turning point in the fight?
You mean for the case for GSP, or just the turning point as in
turning point just in the fight?
Well, I saw in the first minute and a half, GSP looked like he was going to do the same old stuff he's always done.
He tried.
To control it, yeah. It looked like he was going to have it. There's also that faux controversy about the tap, which was just Hendricks moving his arm, and then
he's not tapping.
Well, I tried to explain it to someone who was mentioning it, that he was dry. They weren't sweaty yet. And then you're moving your arm across that fabric, and it just created a shudder. And GSP would have at least pointed to something or said something, but he was working for positions. He clearly didn't think it was a tap. But I thought in the first minute and a half that GSP looked like he was going to do the same thing he always did, and then Hendricks got up and cracked him once, and it changed everything.
And those knees, too.
I heard a lot of people saying that knee missed. And I think those are people who have never been hit with a knee. Because, of course, it didn't hit flush, full in on the way up. But I don't care where a knee hits you. If it's coming towards you and it hits you in the eye socket, and you stumble back, that means it hit you. And it hurts. Knees are not the softest thing in the world.
No.
So, and then the turn, Hendricks started slowing down in the third. And I think it was partially conserving himself.
St. Pierre definitely won the third round.
Yeah, that was the round that I gave to him. I didn't give him any other round. I gave him the third round, and I thought he just tried to control the fifth by holding him against the cage.
Right.
And he had a takedown that was absolutely nothing. He was down for like 2 seconds. So I didn't really see a reason to give him the round in the fifth, even though everyone likes to act like he totally had that one. What I found interesting was that 2 judges gave GSP the first round. And I think it only is because takedown and then submission attempt.
Right.
Because that was it.
But I think that's when you have to look on Hendricks was an aggressor. There needs to be credit to that he was moving forward throughout the entire round.
I think what they're looking at is effective aggression was for GSP. If I try to make an argument for him, I have to try to rationalize this, is that GSP got the takedown, went for a submission, and lost the position, but it was because he was trying for the submission. Don't know why this is the one time they decide that matters, because they never have cared before, but whatever, we'll say that's the reason. And then he was trying to get the takedowns. Now, this is what bothers me. While he was trying to get that single leg, he was getting cracked in the face.
Hard. I think they busted up
his orbital bone. Yeah, and he was first getting punched in the clinch, and then he was getting elbowed viciously. So I don't know why they gave it to GSP, but I guess you could make a point case but I think they're idiots, personally.
Do you think St. Pierre had a good strategy against Hendricks?
I think he did, but I think what happened is what we've seen a lot of times where he gets cracked and then he kind of goes into panic mode. And this time the problem was he kept getting cracked but not going out. So it was kind of resetting all the time.
Right.
He was constantly resetting, and that caused a problem for him. Hendricks did a great job of doing exactly what Weidman did against Silva, which was throwing some kind of awkward angled shots and ones that you really shouldn't throw. But because GSP is so good at countering normal progression, you have to make it weird. You have to get a little funky with it, if I can use, parlance of my own nomenclature. That's Bootsy, so you got to get funky. But he did a good job of being real weird and real odd angles, and he would throw like double uppercuts with the same hand.
Right.
And that's a weird thing to do, but when someone is a master at countering you, you might as well get a little weird with it so he can't predict you.
I think you have to. And once again, this was a testament to GSP because he showed a lot of heart. I think he tried adapting.
Mm-hmm.
He tried to get his jab going. I think it was frustrating to him because he couldn't take him down.
Right.
Where anybody else he fought, maybe not Koscheck, he could take down at will.
Right. I think there is something to be said that he was clearly distracted going into this fight, and that could have caused a problem. He's a professional, and I don't think it made the huge difference, but there may be that, one split-second moment where he wouldn't have been hit by a punch that he did get hit by. At least he would have looked less damaged. But there has to be something said for it, but you never know what someone's going to do there. I was worried about him in the post-fight press conference, not even just for his supposed personal problems, but they just shouldn't do post-fight with guys that get beat up that bad. He should have stayed away. I know that he was trying to be a good champion and show up, but he repeated himself a lot. He slurred a lot.
Should have went to the hospital. I mean, he even said right afterwards he doesn't even remember some of the things.
Right.
He took some very, very hard shots, and that's very scary when someone takes shots like that. He shouldn't have been there, but he's a stand-up guy, and I guess he wanted to be at the press conference. What do you think the future holds for him?
I think he'll be pushed into another fight, and I think it'll be too soon, and I think that'll be a problem. I think it's going to tarnish his legacy a little bit.
Do you think he'll be pushed into it, or the true competitive guy will come out?
Well, I think the people that will push him into it will feed off of the fact that he's competitive.
Right.
They'll use that as leverage to get him to do something he doesn't want to do. We saw it when, just a little microcosm of it, when Rogan made him kind of talk about his personal problems, because he said, no, never mind, and Rogan should have let him walk away. And I don't think Rogan was doing it maliciously. I think he was hoping that helped him somehow.
Right.
But he goes, no, come on, say your thing, and brought him back, held his arm and brought him back over. So I think they can do the same thing with the fight.
Right.
They can be like, no, come on, you can do it. It's okay.
Well, we saw that with Anderson Silva as well.
Yeah, we did. And that's not a guy. I think GSP's a much more, I use this word loosely, a sensitive person. He seems like a guy. When I listen to him talk, he seems sensitive. He seems compassionate about things. I know he likes to play like he's tough, and he talks about that dark side. I think that's just his obsessive-compulsive side.
Right.
But I think he has a lot of love, and he's a good guy. And so I think they can use all that against him, though, and that's what I'm worried about. Because I wouldn't call myself a GSP fan outside of that. I respect the hell out of what he does.
Right.
And an amazing career, how long he's been able to do it. But I'm not really a fan of his style or his attitude when he plays up the part. But it doesn't mean I don't worry about him when I see him repeating himself constantly, looking like he's about to cry when people are asking him what's wrong. And don't get me wrong, it's the reporter's job, especially when he walks himself out there. But they should realize that they're working with a damaged brain at that moment. He's concussed. He's not fully there in all his faculties, and they're prodding him. No, it's a little tough.
They are, and once again, he's for the fans, and that's what he was trying to do. He should have just went to the hospital. Say if his mind is clear, how do you see the rematch going down?
I think it'd be a wrestling thing. I think he would just double on his wrestling. He would work on that more, because he wasn't that far from getting Hendricks down. And he does, clearly with judging, you don't have to hold him down. All you got to do is take him down for 2 seconds and you get it. So I think he'll just redouble his efforts there and not allow Hendricks to start striking. I think he wanted to prove he was a better striker to a point. And then when that wasn't working, tried to do a little takedown, then mix it up. But I think next time we're just going to see him work the takedowns. His jab was on point, though. I mean,
his kicks were on point, too.
But I think there is something to be said. I think Hendricks kind of got to him a little. Hendricks came in smiling the whole time. Every round, yeah, he was smiling. At the beginning of the 5th round, or I think it was the 5th round, maybe going into the 5th, he was singing to himself. Like, just, that's got to be when you're a GSP and you are beat up,
right?
And then you see the competitor singing and smiling and having a good time. That's got to mess with you.
That does. But
although he may not have been awake, so I don't know if he...
But it was amazing. He definitely saw Hendricks smiling and everything. It would get in most people's heads, but he still came out, and I was surprised.
But I think that might be why he tried to strike a little too much, is he kind of wanted to shut him up a little bit.
Try to knock him
I mean,
out.
there's something to be said that he was working the stand-up to then do the takedown, but I'm just thinking that if I saw a guy smiling and laughing over that, I'd want to pop him at least once. Give him a good pop to the face, and then we'll try the takedown. And that could get you in trouble. A lot of people are talking about Hendricks' corner as well, that they shouldn't have told him he was winning. I agree with that, but I don't think Hendricks was trying to coast at the end. I think he was trying to not get wild at the end, because it seems like he's always fighting himself not to get a little crazy.
Right.
And so I think that his corners were idiots, because they're saying 5 minutes away from the title, blah, blah, blah. That's stupid. Say, you're down 4 rounds, knock him out.
Right.
Or at least say down, you might be losing, don't let off the gas.
Yeah, but then you got someone like St. Pierre that, he can stop you. know,
right, and that's why
strikes or a submission.
Yeah, they shouldn't be foolhardy. So maybe you're down 4 rounds is the wrong thing to say, but just say we don't know who's winning.
Right.
We have no idea, and that way you can at least get the most out of your guy without him being crazy.
Right.
And throwing like a Lawler moment, although Lawler did fine. But the other thing I liked about Hendricks was, and I don't know that I've ever seen this before, when he got kicked in the head, I think it was the first round. He literally, like, dropped his hands and looked up in the air and rolled his eyes and went, oh, my God. Because he couldn't believe he got kicked. Like, he must have practiced not getting kicked in the head. And he was just disappointed in himself. To do that in the middle of the biggest fight of your life against a guy who will take any opportunity to knock you out and won't wait for you to sit there and eye roll, that was crazy.
That was crazy. Do you think it might have hurt him a little?
I don't think so. I think he's a guy that if he gets hurt, he gets angry, and he starts throwing back.
Right.
So I think for him to do that, it was kind of a foot shot. It kind of hit him with the foot. I'm sure it stung, but I think his whole thing, when you sit there, like I've done it in training, a lot of people have, when you get hit with something you've been working on not getting hit with, you have a little moment with yourself where you're like, come on. If it hurts you, you don't have that moment because you're busy going, what the hell was that? So I don't think that one hurt him. I think there were shots that hurt him. Those leg kicks, I think that a couple of those leg kicks, he went, oh, what the? And then he started to try to jump in once the next leg kick was coming. That's when I think Hendricks is hurt. The guys that smile and laugh and shake their head no, those are the guys that are hurt.
Right.
But Hendricks wasn't doing that. He was just going, what's wrong with me? Like, why would I get hit by that? And that means he had a sense of humor, which means probably didn't have time to hurt.
That's true. And I can tell you his face wasn't messed up, but I would be very surprised if his legs weren't really red or bruised up the next day.
Yeah, I would agree. Those, I don't know why GSP didn't do more of those. Maybe it was the fear of the takedown, but those were working. And he might do more of those. He might go for leg kicks and then takedowns. GSP might do that because they were so successful. That was 100%. Every time he threw those, Hendricks in the post-fight press conference said that he checked them. I didn't see him check any but one of them where he kind of kicked shin to shin, and then that was it. That was the one time I saw it. So I don't know. We'll see what it is. But it's now what's interesting is what's going to happen with the welterweights.
Very interesting.
Because I know Lawler is not going to want to wait around, but at the same time, he'll fight Nick Diaz if Nick Diaz comes back.
Boy, wouldn't that be a good one?
And Diaz wants to come back, so why not do it? Because A, you're going to sell tickets. That one's going to do well. And B, both of those guys, I think, no one's going to like sit back and try to win on points in that fight.
No, they definitely won't. That would be they fought before.
Right, and Diaz got him with the jab. It was actually a kind of a runaway hook. But
right, so that would be a great fight because there's going to be a lot of talking going on.
Yeah, there will. Although it seems like Lawler's kind of, well, he got a little passionate this time around. He's usually someone who just goes, I don't care, whatever.
Right.
But maybe with Diaz there, because Diaz is going to be flipping him off the whole time.
You know, I think Rory McDonald wasn't egging him on and talking like someone like Diaz would.
Yeah, Rory's an interesting. We talked about it last time. He's a weird guy, and that continues in the cage. And I was at the bar I was at Chris Widlowski was there, who we talked to last Friday, and he talked about, wow, he fights exactly how you explained him. He's no rhythm, kind of awkward, doesn't really show any emotion, doesn't show any sort of, like, there's no fire almost, but he's precision when he starts getting it.
And especially in his mount, he's very, very explosive.
And that's what Dana said, he doesn't do anything unless he's got you down and he's on top.
You know, I think Lawler took some big risks, and it paid off.
It did this time. We'll see if it keeps working, because he lives by the sword, dies by the sword.
Yeah, he's going to, yeah, exactly. That said it best.
And who else is in the division? Well, I guess Woodley is also a welterweight,
That's
right?
Another, I mean, I couldn't believe what he did to Koscheck.
I could believe it because I was political on that one. I thought it was going to be a boring fight, but I left open the possibility that if it was going to be exciting at all, it'd be quick and violent. And so it was the latter, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was. I thought it would go a little longer, but he's a gamer. He's for real in that division as well.
Yeah, and I'm surprised because he started out being so boring when I used to watch him. And maybe he just didn't have his hands, or he didn't believe in his hands yet, or didn't believe in his power. But he's a big welterweight, and he can put the hurt on people.
He is, and I think they mentioned it. How will he react to a 3 or a 5 round fight if the pace is going really
That's what I wonder about, because I think he'll revert back to Boring City, USA, which is where he resides, I think, half the time. But and he's also touchable. We saw Marquardt beat him. I kind of am reserved on whether or not to get on the bandwagon with him, because I saw Marquardt beat him up, and Marquardt has been on the tail end of his career. Koscheck is also on the tail end.
And who did he knock out before that?
Somebody, I don't know, I can't remember. But I just don't, it hasn't been something where I can fully buy in yet.
Right.
I'm close, and he's definitely dangerous to everyone, but I just feel like I haven't seen him pushed and then come back and win after being pushed.
Right.
So I'm going to wait for my judgment till then. Just don't tell him I said that, 'cause I'm sure he'd hurt me.
What do you feel happens to Koscheck now?
Koscheck said he wanted to retire, apparently. Dana said that he doesn't think he should. I think, if you need to walk away, because I don't want to see anyone in danger. And
Right.
anyone through the amateurs or the pros, I don't care who you are, I don't want you to end up sounding like GSP, but all the time. Right? I don't want that to happen to anybody. So if he feels like it's time to leave, then he should leave. But I think he still can make some good money in the UFC. And these fighters sometimes forget that they need to think about the future when it comes to finances. And I know Koscheck buys stuff. I've seen him in magazines and things. He owns some things that are expensive.
Well, hopefully he's had over 20 fights in the UFC, so hopefully he's made some money. And you're right, he's still a game fighter.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, could he still be competitive for a title shot?
And, well, at least, I don't know why guys aren't okay with being a gatekeeper. It's not the most lavish job in the world, but it's an important job. And if you can do it and keep your faculties and your wits about you, why not do it if you can't get to the title?
Right.
Why not be that guy? Because you can start asking for a little more money and taking on people who are still competitive. And if you bring together enough wins, you'll definitely be put back into the mix. Right. But why not just accept that gatekeeper spot if you can keep it?
And he's a game fighter. What I like about him is there's no quitting him. With the GSP,
no, that's why he gets knocked out so bad.
With the GSP fight, he had an easy way out. The doctor kept on asking, can you see?
Right.
Can you see? He kept on saying yes, yes, yes. His eye was swollen shut. So he's a gamer, and you got to appreciate the heart.
Yeah, most definitely. And again, it's as long as his brain is okay. If he feels like he's starting to forget everything and can't, or if he is having aggression problems, which happens to a lot of guys that have head trauma, then he should step away. And because that health first, obviously. But I've seen his cars. He needs to make sure he keeps the money coming. You don't want that Jens Pulver situation where you're putting your car on eBay because you can't afford rent.
I just don't think you should stay in longer than you have to. And
that's definitely true.
That's where I think the coaches really need to come in, and hopefully they care about their fighters.
And there is something he can do kind of the Forrest Griffin thing, and Mark Coleman and those guys, where they go around and do seminars and things, or even Brandon Vera was at the Grappler's Quest, and he did a little thing with the kids out there, and was involved in the opening kind of ceremony thing. It was too early in the morning, so I wasn't really paying attention. But, there's still opportunities to make money outside of doing that, especially a guy like him, who everybody knows him. Love him or hate him, you know who he is.
You know him. I mean, he was on the season 1, so everybody knows him.
And Dana had that good moment with him when he before the fight, and I've never seen Dana do that before. at least outwardly, where he was talking to him before the fight and giving him a handshake and whatnot. So that was cool.
Well, he's done a lot for the UFC. He stepped in on a lot of fights on short notice. He never said no to anything, and
right.
He tries to be an exciting fighter.
Yeah, and he's willing to be a bad guy, even though you can see it kind of irks him sometimes, because it's got to be tough if you're not Sonnen and you're not built for being a bad guy. Then it's got to be a little tough when people just don't give you any respect because they dislike you.
Right.
It's got to hurt a little.
It has to hurt a little, but I think it's great that he was just a wrestler, and he likes to put on a show. He likes to throw his hands and not just take a guy down and lay on him.
He's got a hell of a punch, too. Like, when he lands on people, it looks pretty... It's him and Woodley. Woodley's kind of the new version of him, which I feel bad saying because it's not like Koscheck is done as far as I know. But it is that strong wrestler who just has some sick power and some crazy punches.
Crazy punches. And people forget he had a split decision against Hendricks.
Right.
It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, and that really wasn't that long ago. Although I don't know if I feel like I remember that should have been unanimous, but I don't care. It's okay.
But it was a close, it was a
competitive fight, right?
Very competitive fight, and once again, Koscheck's a gamer.
Yep. And the only other thing I can think of that we need to talk about before we leave is Evan Dunham lost, and that hurts my feelings, and I'm sad.
Yeah.
I mean, props to Cerrone. It was a good fight. He caught him early was the thing.
I think Cerrone just looked... It wasn't nothing against Dunham. Cerrone just looked phenomenal.
And you know why? 155. Not one. He was doing that 145 crap where he just was emaciated and he didn't have to get up and go.
Right.
And then at 155, all of a sudden, boom, he's back. He's kicking butt.
He really is. And he was so unpredictable with the stand-up and the kicks.
Right.
And the punches, you don't know what's going on.
And I think that comes, because I remember him doing that before, I think that comes from him having energy and having all his wits about him. Because when he does that 145, I think he's just so dehydrated he doesn't know what he's doing.
A lot of fighters, when they cut those extra 10, 15 pounds, it definitely is a negative impact
When
on their
I can't remember how tall he is, but he shouldn't be doing 145. It's crazy. That's like George Roop style at 6'1", 135. That's stupid. Shut up. Go back up to 145 or 155. Just fight people your size, because you'll have more energy and you'll be better. And now Chael's going to go back down to 185.
Yeah,
That's
what
ridiculous.
are your thoughts on that fight?
That was just, Chael was, I think, he made his jokes, but he made a good point. He said, there's stuff I can't do at 205. I can't get out of certain positions because guys are big and they're good at wrestling, just like I am. So when they get on top of me, I'm in trouble. That made sense to me. At least he was honest about it. And he says 185, there's those same spots I can get out of. So he's just being honest about that. He needs to be at the lower weight because he can't compete with the big fellas.
No, he can't. And I like Chael. He's a gamer as well. He's a phenomenal speaker. But the end result is he's losing fights.
Yep.
I think he lost 3 or 4 out of his last
Well,
7.
to be fair though, he lost to Anderson Silva, John Jones, and then Rashad Evans, who is now back.
Right. But he's getting rewarded. To do an Ultimate Fighter Brazil.
Yeah, but he was doing that anyway. I don't want to talk too much on that because that stuff happens, and honestly, I was telling Roxanne about it at the bar. It kind of works better if he has a loss because Vanderlei's not even on the map in that division, and Chael was at number 6.
Right.
So at least it kind of makes more sense why they're matching up at this point.
Are they fighting at 185 or?
I can't remember. I think they both have to cut so much. I hope they do 205, but like Chael said, he can't do as much at 205, so maybe they are doing 185. I feel a little weird about it because both of them are huge.
Now, if that fight went on
at least.
with Evans, how do you think it would have played out?
Which fight?
With Sonnen and Evans.
At what, 185?
Yeah, the fight just the other night. If they would have went to the second and third round.
I don't know. I think it would have been boring. I think one of them would have held the other one. I know Sonnen would have held him and just done little pot shots. I'm trying not to be, how can I say this in the most politically accurate way possible? It's weird to me how Black Zillions have all of a sudden made a resurgence within the last, because there was that period where in January, maybe completely unrelated, Biogenesis was popped, and then they all started losing their fights for a while, and then I don't know what happened, but 8 months later, in August, they started all winning again. And then now Rashad, I don't know if you remember Rashad versus Lil Nog, but that's not the same guy I saw against Sonnen. It's a little different. So
how'd you think Rashad looked?
I think he looked like someone gave him the go juice. And of course I mean caffeine and rock stars and things, not anything illegal. But yeah, he looked phenomenal, and he looked in phenomenal shape, and that always worries me. That's the same that I saw with Munoz. All of a sudden, he was in really, really good shape.
Do you think something may click in their head and they just might start eating their veggies a little more and working out?
I don't know. There's a lot of pressures for fighters at that level, and there's a lot of commitments they have to make. And I don't want to say that anyone's doing anything out of line. I just find it odd when an entire camp does poorly and then very well all at the same times around a particular event.
Right.
But at the same time, Rashad had said that he had lost the love for the grind, and that every day doing those workouts, he just hated it. And he needed to find a way to all of a sudden love it again, and it happened at some point. And that can just be something that occurs. I've felt that with projects that I work on where you start to hate it and resent it, and then all of a sudden something just clicks and you go, oh, I remember why I love this thing. So, and it happens with music a lot too, actually. That's like the best example I can use for people that don't do sports is, you know, when you love a song and then you just hate the song because you heard it too much, and then like 5 years later you just happen to hear it and you go, I remember this.
And you love it.
Yeah, what a great song that is. Why did I hate this? Why don't I have that record anymore? Oh, listen to how old I sound. Record. I don't have it on my iPod. Is that the new? That's not even the new thing. I don't know what the new thing is.
What do you feel is next for Rashad? Would you like to see him face?
Anyone? Honestly, I need to see him again. This fight was too short. Exactly. I don't know what happened.
I agree.
I get he can't fight a lot of the people I'd want to see him fight because he's either friends with them or he's already fought them. So, I don't know. I just want to see him do another fight, and whoever they have available, I'd say someone in the top 10 though still, because he's number 4.
Yeah, I think he definitely has to fight someone in the top 10.
Yeah, well, sometimes they give him those kind of gimme fights where it's, there's a rivalry. They just need somebody. I could see that happening. Or someone who's on a streak but just for whatever reason isn't in the top 10. Sometimes that happens. I hope they give him somebody up there. But with Shogun leaving, he's not in the division anymore. Sonnen, he just fought and is out. He can't fight Thiago Silva. He already fought Lil Nog, who's always hurt forever anyway. And then you have a lot of other people matched up already.
Right.
So, I don't know. I'll go fight him, I guess. Let's do this.
Payday.
Yeah, I could use a good payday. That's what I talked about before you came in, is that I'm just, I'm appreciative for everyone helping me out, but now I got to start trying to get more likes and shares and a little sponsorship in there. So, if everyone wants me to fight Rashad,
We'll get you. We got a few more fights out of you.
Yeah, we can invite him to the Tough Enough thing, and I'll challenge him in the ring. I imagine he doesn't need a camp for me, right? So, we could do it pretty quick. We can have a quick turnaround.
That's a good point. And there was one other fight. There's several, but the Russian?
Yeah,
I can't pronounce his name.
His first name was Ali, so you can just call him Ali.
Ali. What were your thoughts on that fight?
I didn't think it was a unanimous decision. Or, no, wait, I'm okay with unanimous. I didn't think it was 30-27. I thought 29-28 at best. Right. But again, we have this terrible judging system, so I don't know. If it was up to me, and I should say that, I was watching it, but I was talking with the other fighters because that was the first fight of the night, so there's probably things I missed. But it seemed like Elliott started out slow and was getting tagged and controlled, and then he came on somewhere in the second round. I'd have to watch it again to know exactly when, and then I felt like he took control of the fight. Or at least was tagging him as much as he was getting tagged. So, both of the guys impressed me, but that's because I'm a nerd for the sport, so I knew all the things that I enjoyed about it. I feel like for other people it was kind of a boring fight, and it was awkward for a lot of people.
Have you ever seen someone with a style like Elliott?
Well, I've watched Elliott for the last 4 years, so I'm kind of just used to it, and honestly, some of the stuff he does is stuff that I would do when I was sparring and playing around, but he does it in the ring, which is crazy.
And what's interesting to me is it's one thing if he's doing it and winning and not getting hit, but he took some shots because his hands were down.
But that's where he's comfortable. I think if he puts his hands up, I have that problem sometimes where if I stand orthodox and I have my hands up and I'm doing everything by the book, I'm getting tagged by people for whatever's happening that day, or maybe it's just someone's better or has a style I can't pick up on. And then I'll switch to southpaw, and I have one hand up. It's not the Philly defense, but I got the one hand against the opposing cheek and my lead hand down. And I move a lot better. I'm quicker.
And
so
it works for you.
Yeah, and it helps because my problem is when I'm getting tagged in the other direction, it's because I'm too stationary and I'm not doing enough movement. And for whatever reason, in an orthodox position, that's just what's happening to me. So if I switch it up, if I catch that it's happening and I switch it up, it doesn't always work, but sometimes all of a sudden now I'm elusive, I'm getting away. I might get tagged a little, but it's less than if I'm standing there in a cage defense.
Right.
So I think Elliott gets stuck in that mode as well, and maybe he needs to switch to a more orthodox position. But I do have a problem with in MMA, we don't seem to pay attention to the fact that rolling with a punch means you're not getting the brunt of the punch. And,
right, absolutely, when you're not taking it full on.
And I saw it with both. I think that had something to do with the Hendricks fight too, but especially with Elliott, because his style's so weird and he does roll, I feel like they're giving some significant, quote-unquote, significant strikes where there really aren't, because he's moving his head with the punch, so they think he's getting cracked.
Right.
And it's, again, if they had the monitor, they would know that he's rolling. But they're not. Sometimes they're looking at it from behind or from an angle where they can't really see what's happening. And so I think they're giving more points. What was interesting to me, well, maybe not interesting, what I was glad to see is that Elliott, his ground game is weird, and it works. And I love it, because it's awkward, and it's like...
he's tough as nails, too. He's an exciting fighter.
You can see the first fight that I really was like, this guy... Because I always liked his style. I like weird styles, so I always liked his style. But his fight against Dodson, where Dodson just couldn't figure out what to do with him. Dodson's kind of weird on his own, but Elliott was just so awkward and doing, like, cartwheel kicks and stuff, and Dodson would take him down, and then he would just, like, turtle up and do a double roll. And he didn't know what to do with him. He couldn't figure it out.
It's unpredictability, and it's hard to prepare for someone like that.
It is. Hopefully, the problem is if you it's always with more risk that you're unpredictable. And if people start learning your style, then you're just in trouble.
You are, and it makes you wonder if Elliott would go to maybe another camp and, adapt his style a little.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know who he trains with? I didn't catch it. But, yeah, honestly, he could use some work in his kickboxing.
Right.
I think if he did some kickboxing, so maybe AKA, maybe that's who he's with, and I'm just an idiot. But if he can get someone who can really take his style and then utilize a kickboxing, make it a little more standard while still keeping some of his eccentric behavior.
And I think that's the key, because a lot of coaches say this is how you have to do things, this is how it is, where you want to adapt to their style.
Yeah.
You're not going to train someone that has really short arms the same way you would with someone with really long arms.
Right, and I had that problem all the time with my instructor. He always wanted me to stay, and for good reason. He was right. I needed to learn the orthodox style before I started messing around with the other stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think there was something you said. I needed to be fluid and feel comfortable, and I always felt uncomfortable in orthodox. I'm glad I understand how to do orthodox. I understand where the combo and the power comes from, but it's still, I need to be a little weird. Yeah, I'm Bootsy. I gotta be a little funky sometimes, But
it's getting that right coach that can see what you have.
Right, and he did learn how. It was just kind of like the parent. It was like I was the teenage kid coming into his own, and he was like the frustrated parent who was like, "Stop standing that way," and I was like, "It's what I want to do, man." So I had to deal with it, but I believe if Elliott learns a little bit better, maybe just boxing, maybe he doesn't need the kicks.
Right.
But if he learns his stand-up to make it a little more crisp, what he'll end up having is Dominic Cruz's style, which is very weird. I know everyone forgets what Dominic Cruz's style is because he's been gone for so long, but that he has his hands down a lot. He's bopping around and changing which foot's the lead foot, and it works really well for him. Maybe his wrestling is just a lot better than Elliott's, though, and so I don't know if that would get Elliott in some trouble. But since he's already bopping around and being weird.
Well, it's not a boxing match either where you're worried about the takedowns. You're worried about other things where you don't have to keep your hands, by your chin the entire time. But I just thought he was so tough and had such big heart where if a few things were changed, I think he's, one of the best.
Well, he's also a huge fight. He's taller than me.
I can't believe he was 125?
Yeah, and he's taller than I am, and I do 125, and I'm really tall for a flyweight, so I don't know how he does. Although now I think I might only be able to make 135.
I thought you were making that light heavyweight against Rashad.
Well, I'll do that as a 135. I'll cut down, and I'll still, because what I need to be able to do is when he throws a punch, I got to be able to get out of the way, and then take the current of the force of that punch will lift me into the air, and I will land some sort of flying kick or
and then
maybe
collect the payday.
Yeah, of course. And it's the nice thing. Have you ever tried to punch a bag? where you can't really hit it, because it's flowing with you.
Right.
That's what I am, because I'm so much lighter than he is, that he'll throw the punch, and the force of the punch will actually push me back with the punch.
I can't wait to see that.
It'll be great. I think everyone's really going to enjoy our fight. It's going to be a super fight.
Oh, it's a super
Yeah,
fight
we're going
now.
to do it it's pretty super of me to get in there and do it. So, and it'll be at the Dallas Stadium, of course.
Of course.
You've got to be at the Cowboy Stadium. And we'll get everyone. The co-main event will be Ronda Rousey versus Kane, because she said that she could beat him under the right circumstances. So, these are the right circumstances.
That's right. So we fill up the card. Speaking of Dallas Stadium, Bootsy, do you think they could fill it up with a St. Pierre rematch?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they could do this rematch. I think they would need St. Pierre Silva or Silva Jones.
I think the St. Pierre Silva is pretty much dead in the water now.
Yeah, probably. But those are the names you would need.
Jones. I think Silva Jones is still a super fight. Everybody.
Yeah, I think that they could fill it up for that. Honestly, if they lowered their goddamn prices, they could fill it up now with a Sun and Vandalay fight. If they just lowered the prices a little bit, but they won't, and tickets are like $150 to be in the nosebleed.
And they're getting it. The UFC definitely knows how to run a business.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately in some places now they're not filling up the stadiums, which is getting a little worrisome from my standpoint. I just always worry about that kind of stuff. But like the Mighty Mouse Seattle card, there was a lot of empty seats up in the higher levels. And that's, with Ellenberger Rory, which that turned out to be a stinker, but on paper that was a big fight. But I think that they could fill it either with lowering the prices to a reasonable level because there are so many seats,
right,
or just making sure you have a real good super fight. And I would say they would need to have probably 3 titles. They would probably have to do 3 title fights because it's worth it when you have that many people showing up. And it just makes sure that people makes it there. So you do like a lower weight, maybe an Aldo fight, although he is notoriously bad on pay-per-views. I mean, at least he's enough to pull in 200,000, but 200,000 is not good for a pay-per-view compared to everybody else, and that's what he does regularly. So, and he goes sub 200,000 sometimes. So you need an Aldo as like the third fight. You would probably need George in a title fight, and then Jones or Silva in a title fight,
right,
or have 2 of those guys in a super fight, have Aldo as a fight, and then have a number 1 contender that's like 2 real big names that everybody wants to see. Maybe get Arnold Schwarzenegger in there. I saw him at the thing. He still looks like Dan Severn. Did you see Dan Severn? He looked
great.
Young. What the hell? Who does he have as a doctor that carves up his face so well? Because there's no way.
Tons of fights. Did he have over 100 fights? Or I know
I believe it's over 100 now. And he's what is he, like 60 something?
I don't know how old he is, but he did.
That's a hell of a doctor
that
take care of him. Yeah, he looked 40ish. And I see, like, you look at Don Fry, who's around the same age, and he doesn't look like that. That's not how he looks. And it's not like Dan Severn has had a real, comfortable life. He's always had the hard road. So I don't know what he's doing, but props to him for looking so good.
So what did you make of the whole 20 years in the UFC?
Oh, I didn't care about that.
Oh, you didn't care about that?
I didn't give a crap. It's all the pomp and circumstance. I'm not a pomp and circumstance guy. If you're going to do that, put it on the intro. Have the guys walking in like in the Pride days. Right. That's where I want to put the money. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad that they paid homage to those guys. Right. I just don't care right now. Thank you. Because I've been following this forever. I've been paying homage to these guys. I always talk, about the early days.
Right.
So for them to do it this one time and I don't know, it's just silly.
Well, what do you feel about the evolution of the whole sport?
Well, obviously I love that because I wouldn't be involved in this and doing what I am right now if I didn't love it. So, but it's not great when your event has 8 decisions and they're all good up until that last one, and then you have a horrendous decision on the 20th anniversary. I think it speaks to some of the negative that's coming out of the evolution. That we're getting a lot of sports BS, and there's a lot of money that's making things a little weird. So I like it and I dislike it. I love that we're getting great athletes, and not just tough construction guys.
Right.
That's cool. But I love the evolution, but I just don't care all that much about that pomp.
Did you ever imagine, though, 20 years ago, that it would
20 years ago? Well, I wasn't paying attention 20 years ago.
When did you start watching it?
2000 GP was the first thing I ever saw for Pride. And you know what? I couldn't imagine that it's as big as it is, or as accepted as it is in the U.S.
Good point. Very accepted.
Because I watched Pride, I knew it could be that big, because Pride, they were doing 70,000 seats for the GP, that's ridiculous. We can't get anywhere near that in the U.S. So I know what heights it can be, and that doesn't, wow me or surprise me. But the acceptance level of it is amazing. That it's on ESPN sometimes. They talk about it on there. That Fox covers it.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty amazing.
You can go bet on it in any of the casinos.
And I mean, all the guys that were a part of making it is great. I mean, I don't want to take away from anybody because I just don't care about the pomp. But I've always been a person I don't go up and take pictures with fighters because it's not important for me to get up there and put my face look, I was with X. I just go up and say thank you. That's what I do. That's as crazy as I get with it. When I was at the dinner with all the coaches around town and I see Vandalay and Couture, I didn't even bother him. I leave him alone. So I've always been someone who doesn't like the pomp and circumstance thing. I like being behind the mic. I like being behind the scenes. And, I think it's a personal thing that you say. Dana's, I'm glad that he did it for them. But I feel like it's their thing.
Right.
They should be doing it, and I'm glad that fans supported the people that did come out when they did their show, but I don't know. It's just not my bag. It's not my thing. I'm a low-key guy.
Who could have ever imagined the money that's in it today for the fighters?
Yeah, and that's what I do hope Dana gave them little bonus checks when they showed up. I'm sure he paid them for showing up, and I know he took care of them.
Yeah, I'm sure they're well taken
and that's
care of.
Good to see, especially the guys who Dana talked about, and he was real good about it, that he wanted to make sure that the guys who started the sport weren't seen as bad guys.
Right.
Which, of course, it's easy to do when you're a billionaire. But he didn't have to do it, and he did, which is awesome. Because those guys, regardless of what they couldn't do with the company, they set it up. They made the foundation, and they put it out there for everyone to see. And then Dana and the Fertittas just took it from there.
Yeah, they took it to a new level. They got a passion for the sport. It's amazing to hear these guys that were fighting, in the 90s for, $500, $1,000, and now finally they're making big paydays.
Right. Well, although some of those guys on the lower card, I mean, they're still getting paid.
Not as much as what it should be or what it will be, but even guys like Sonnen, I mean, he was fighting back in the day for hundreds of dollars.
Well, I was glad to see Mark Coleman was getting some love, too. They were talking a lot with him. It's almost sad to me that he can't still fight because I love watching that guy. He was just fun to watch.
The godfather of ground and pound.
Yep, and the headbutt. I've loved that joke that if they still had the headbutt, he'd still be champ because it's probably true. He didn't use that thing for doing calculus. He used it to smash you, and it was awesome to see. Him and Igor Vovchanchin both had real good headbutts. But I loved, he had the great quote during the video thing that they played for everybody where he said, I'm just glad that the people that started this company were fighters because they had to fight tooth and nail to make it work. Or, I'm paraphrasing, but it's a good way to put it.
It's true, and I know Dana comes from the boxing world. The Fertittas were boxing fans and everything, and they love it. They're truly passionate. That was the only way it was going to work. A business person wouldn't have made it work. You could have recruited the CEO from MIT and it wouldn't work. Right.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that they've made it what it is because that's what allows me to do this. So I'm happy for it. And, I'm happy that I'm doing it when I am because I got to get Joe Silva's job. I need that job. I don't want to steal it from him. Right. I want, when he's done, I want it. Because I want to be the guy doing the awesome reactions after everybody gets knocked out. This is the new thing I'm going to try to do. We need a Joe Silva reaction cam. That's a little picture-in-picture thing for all the pay-per-views. I'll pay an extra $5 for that thing because he is so funny when people get knocked out. He screams at the top of his lungs and jumps out of his chair. That's the best.
Well, he has a lot of responsibility.
He does. Just from what I'm doing now, I can really appreciate what that guy does. That's hard because he's dealing with egos and contracts that I can only dream of.
And lawyers and this and that. I mean, who really knows what goes on behind the scenes, too?
Yeah, and I've read a couple of things. He's had a couple of interviews talking about it, and he doesn't go into details, obviously. But it's a lot of people think that when you do that matchmaking stuff, it's just you're moving chess pieces however you want. But there's so many people involved in a fighter's life,
right?
And all of them want something, and the lawyers want something, and the PR guy for the fighter doesn't want this and that, and the fighter himself may or may not want something. They want guarantees. They want all this extra stuff. And he has to just sit there and be friends with. You got to befriend these people,
right,
while still being kind of the guy in charge.
And he wants to make it a win-win situation for everybody, but then he deals with people getting hurt.
Yeah,
and that throws a whole thing.
Oh, I don't know how. That's the one I'm starting to really appreciate that world. That's a tough one because you can't control it, and sometimes you got to wonder if people are just backing out. It's hard to tell, and especially at that level with so much on the line. That's got to be tough for him to keep his job as long as he has. He's clearly a master of.
Yeah, he's a master of it. And I think you got to even ask the question: how many guys are fighting that shouldn't be fighting as well? That might be banged up, but need the money and just go ahead with the fight.
Yeah, and he's got to look him in the eye and say, all right, because if they want to do it, he can't really stop him unless he tattles to a doctor and they pull him in there. But you see it even with the fights in Brazil are controlled by a different matchmaker, and their matchups aren't very good. It's usually, at least on paper, it almost always looks like a one-sided fight. And that just shows what Joe Silva is able to do. So he's and he's been around for a long. I don't know when he started with the UFC, but he's been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's a big fight fan as well. And
he better be. Boy, if he's not into fighting. Although at this point you got to wonder if he's just like going through motions.
I really think all those guys, even if it wasn't a UFC event, they love watching it. They just enjoy it.
Right. Well, I can only hope to be that. But we hit an hour and a half, so we gotta stop now because I only have so much space on my computer to get this stuff done. But are you gonna be back in Friday?
Yeah, I'll be in Friday.
Oh wait, is it? Yeah, it's Monday, right? Oh,
it's Monday.
This keeps happening to me.
You got to get that fight with Rashad already.
I'm gonna get it. It's gonna happen. I know I can pull some strings.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, I'm it. All right, and this has been FightGrind Radio with the Las Vegas Tribune. This has been your boy Bootsy with Matt Orlick, and we will be in 4 days.